After my sister fled the country to escape her wedding, my parents set their sights on me, their long-lost younger daughter who'd only recently been found. They drugged me and Peter to force our hands, making sure what was done couldn't be undone. We were rushed into a wedding we didn't want. After we were married, Peter was always cold to me. Even in bed, he just went through the motions. He never cared about anything I did. Even if I stayed out all night and was dropped off by another man the next morning, he wouldn't ask a single question. I was getting tired of it all. I wanted a divorce. When I put the divorce papers in front of him, a crack finally appeared on his usually unfazed expression. That night, he came home drunk. When I walked in, he was crouching on the floor in front of the dog's talking buttons. He looked up at me with a pitiful expression, then reached out and pressed a button. Sad. Sad. Peter got home very late tonight. He smelled of alcohol. He saw me waiting for him on the sofa in my pajamas and froze. His gaze lingered on me for a moment, the desire in his eyes swirling and growing stronger. He loosened his tie and said in a hoarse voice, "Wait for me." Then, he went into the bathroom. 10 minutes later, he came out, drying his hair with a towel, another towel wrapped low around his waist. A drop of water trickled down his neck, disappearing somewhere below. The atmosphere in the living room was just right. Dim lighting. A specially blended aromatherapy scent. Just like all the other times, he kissed my lips, my neck, and then my chest. We tumbled onto the sofa together. I tilted my head back, my hands gripping his arms. Suddenly, he stopped. He asked, "Is Leo back in town?" I had just been getting worked up, my head spinning with desire, and I nodded dreamily. He hesitated. You went to see him tonight?" How strange. He was actually asking about my plans? Peter and I had a marriage of convenience. From the moment we got together to our wedding day, everything was orchestrated by our parents. After the wedding, Peter's mother said, "Give me a grandchild, and I'll stop meddling in your lives." They didn't care if we loved each other. They didn't care if our marriage was a happy one. All that mattered was that our two family names were linked. A child would be the ultimate bond to secure the partnership between our families. So, for a few days every month, we would sleep together like it was a chore. I snapped back to reality. "Yes," I said. "He just got back, and today's his birthday, so of course I..." Before I could finish, Peter grabbed my neck and silenced me with a rough kiss. Tonight, he was exceptionally forceful. Like he was the one who'd been drugged. Drugged. Thinking back to that night, it's still hard to forget. Before that one-night stand, I didn't actually know Peter. I'm the Wilson family's long-lost younger daughter. I was only found and brought back 5 years ago. My parents found me dull and timid, not bright or likable at all. They intentionally kept me from socializing with people in their circle. My mother claimed she was just worried I wouldn't be used to our new life. So they hired all sorts of tutors. They taught me etiquette, piano, and a host of other things I'd never even heard of. 6 months ago, my sister, Renee, was supposed to get engaged to someone from the Chi family. She refused. Her betrothal was originally to the family's eldest son. But after he died in an accident, the engagement fell to the second son, Peter. My sister fled the country overnight. My parents searched for a long time but couldn't find her. At their wits' end, they turned their attention to me. They officially announced my identity to the public. Then came that dinner party, where I drank a glass of spiked wine and ended up in bed with Peter. The next morning, we both stared at each other, naked and horrified, amidst the wreckage of the hotel room. I clutched the blanket, completely bewildered. Peter's face was dark, like a volcano about to erupt. But he was still gentlemanly enough to have his assistant buy me a new set of clothes. As we left the hotel, one after the other, our figures were caught by paparazzi who had been staking out the place. That day's headline on Metro News read, #Chi and Wilson families announce union, blockbuster merger imminent #. With things having come to this, our parents rushed us into a wedding to stop the media frenzy. Looking at the marriage certificate in my hand, I didn't know what to feel. Marrying from one rich family into another, it didn't seem so bad. It just felt so sudden. Peter was a stranger to me. Besides his face, I knew absolutely nothing about him. A marriage like this. It felt like a joke. As I thought this, I sighed without realizing it. The man beside me stiffened, and his gaze darkened as he looked at me. He said, "Don't worry. It's just for show." Oh. So it was a fake marriage. I didn't say anything. I'm an introvert. I don't talk much even with people I know well, let alone a stranger. I had no objections to a fake marriage. The annoying part was that Peter's mother was desperate for a grandchild. While Peter managed to keep me from having to see her, he couldn't stop my own mom from seeing me. She brought it up every 3 days, nagging me relentlessly. My ears were ringing from it. So, I thought, why not just give them what they want and have a baby? I went to Peter and got straight to the point. "Can we have a baby?" He stared at me, stunned, for a long moment. His brows slowly furrowed, as if to say, "Are you serious?" I wanted to get it over with, so I explained briefly, "If we have a child, your mom and my mom will stop nagging us. It would make things easier for both of us." Afraid he'd say no, my voice grew softer. "What do you think?" He closed the file he was holding. After a few seconds of silence, he asked, "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." "Okay." The next day, I woke up in our bedroom. The housekeeper knocked on the door. "Ma'am, the master asked me to make you some congee. Would you like some now?" I ruffled my hair. My voice was a little hoarse when I replied, "Yes, please." On the dining table was a medicinal congee, easy on the stomach. My health isn't great. For the 6 months we'd been married, all my meals had been specially planned by a private nutritionist. Peter was always like that. Though he was cold on the surface and didn't like me, he was still thoughtful and meticulous, fulfilling his duties as a husband. This, I figured, must be the kind of upbringing you get in a wealthy family. And my upbringing taught me to never be impolite. And to never waste a single bite of food. After eating my fill, I collapsed onto the sofa and binged a TV show. Before I knew it, the sun had set. My phone rang. "Mandy, a new bar just opened downtown. Want to come out for a drink tonight?" It was Mia, Leo's sister. When I first came back to my family, no one in their social circle really liked me. Only Mia was willing to be my friend. It was because of her that I met Leo and we all became good friends. I glanced at the time. On weekdays, Peter usually got home around 9. He'd be back soon. I hesitated, about to refuse. But Mia said, "My brother's only back for a little while, shouldn't we hang out more? Don't you get bored staying at home all day? Besides, Peter wouldn't care what I did. And I had my period today, so I didn't have to perform my duties." So I nodded. "Okay." Mia laughed. "Great. I'll have my brother come pick you up." When Leo arrived, I was standing by the road wrapped in a heavy coat. He got out of the car to open the door for me. He turned up the heat and asked, "Why didn't you wait for me to call before coming down?" I sniffled. "I didn't want to make you wait." His expression softened. "You wouldn't have." As the car warmed up, I took off my scarf. While we were stopped at a red light, Leo glanced over at me. He froze for a second, a hint of disappointment in his eyes. He quickly composed himself and asked, "How's married life treating you?" I answered honestly, "It's good. Sounds like you and Peter are getting along well." "Yeah, he's a good person." Leo let out a dry laugh. "Only you would describe someone like that." The car stopped in front of the bar. But Leo didn't seem to be getting out. I leaned over. "What's wrong?" The curve of his lips seemed forced. "Something came up with work that I have to deal with. You guys go have fun." Call me when you're ready to leave, and I'll come get you. I didn't press him. I just nodded. Okay. Inside the bar, a waiter led me upstairs. Mia was sitting on the rooftop terrace. When she saw me, she leaned forward to look, but seeing no one behind me, she asked, "Where's my brother?" I sat down as I answered, "He had to take care of some work, so he left." Mia didn't seem to care what I said. She just stared at my neck, her face a mask of gleeful gossip. Whoa. You and Peter, things are getting intense. Didn't you say you two were just putting on a show, that it was a fake marriage? I then remembered last night's battle. I laughed awkwardly and, in a futile attempt to hide the evidence, put my scarf back on. I explained, it was like that before. But now, we're planning on having a baby. Mia's jaw dropped. It took her 3 seconds to recover. She downed the drink in front of her and muttered, "It's over. My brother's completely out of the running now." I didn't quite hear her and leaned closer. "What did you say?" She threw an arm around my neck and pinched my cheek. "I said you have to keep me company tonight. Don't you dare forget your best friend just because you have a husband. We're the best, you and me. Got it, little Mandy?" I smiled. Got it. Mia was going through a rough patch with her boyfriend, so she drank a lot. As dawn started to break, she finally passed out. Since I was trying to get pregnant, I hadn't touched a drop of alcohol. I called Leo, and together we got Mia home and settled. Then, he drove me back. In the car, I was still a little worried about Mia. Leo told me, "Don't worry, I called Frank. He's on his way to take care of her." They're always like this. They've been fighting and making up since high school. Their relationship is like a world war. You don't need to worry, they'll be fine in a few days. I smiled. That's nice, in a way. So much passion. I really envied Mia. She was optimistic, outgoing, and enthusiastic. She would love someone with all her heart. And she was willing to befriend an unpopular girl like me. Whether it was love or friendship, she seemed to have an endless supply of energy. These were things I had never experienced. Leo looked at me and asked curiously, "What's it like, being with Peter?" I thought about it carefully. I answered honestly, "It's very quiet. Most of the time, we're just doing our own thing. He's very busy. I don't really have much to do. So most of the time, I'm just spacing out. We've never argued, never fought. Not even the silent treatment. Usually, I say something, and he replies. Never crossing a line, but never getting close either." Leo lowered his gaze. "That sounds nice, too. Is it? I don't know. I've seen couples who are at each other's throats, and I've seen couples who are inseparable. But I don't think I've ever seen a couple like us." I shrugged and didn't say anything. Leo asked again, "Didn't Peter call you tonight? It's almost morning. You stayed out all night. Won't he be upset with you?" I felt a bit awkward. I couldn't just come out and say Peter didn't care about me, could I? I had my pride. So, I made up an excuse. He's very understanding. Afraid he wouldn't believe me, I even nodded solemnly. The car stopped in front of the villa. Leo looked at me quietly for a long time. He whispered, "Are you happy?" I didn't hesitate. Of course. Happy, I guess. He smiled. That's good. Opening the door to the house, I jumped. Our housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, seemed to appear out of nowhere. "Ma'am, you're back." The man on the sofa had his back to me. I hesitated for a moment. I figured I should at least say something in a situation like this. So I walked around to face him. "You're up early." Peter looked at me. His usually cold eyes seemed to hold a flicker of emotion. 2 dark circles were starkly visible under his eyes. A bit of stubble was showing. My heart sank. Did something happen at the company? Otherwise, Why would a man as meticulous as Peter not have shaved last night? I debated whether to comfort him but decided it was better not to pry. As I stood there awkwardly, Peter got up and started walking toward the door. Mrs. Chen followed him, asking, "Sir, you've been up all night. Aren't you going to have some breakfast before you go?" Peter didn't answer. Only the sound of the door closing echoed in the hall. Mrs. Chen then asked me, "Ma'am, I've prepared the beef noodle soup you like for breakfast. Would you like to eat now?" Yes. I was starving. 10 minutes later, the beef noodle soup was placed in front of me, along with a cup of hangover remedy tea. As I ate, I asked, "Was he really up all night?" Mrs. Chen nodded. "Yes, ma'am. He sat in the living room the entire night." I was surprised. "What? Why?" Mrs. Chen whispered, "He seemed to be in a bad mood. Couldn't sleep." "I see. It must be that something really did happen at the company." But with Peter's abilities, I was sure he could handle it. After breakfast, I lay down on the bed. A husband and wife should encourage each other. So I took out my phone and sent him a text. "Don't worry, setbacks are normal. You have to allow for unexpected things to happen." Half an hour later, he replied, "You think this is normal?" "Of course. Don't overthink it. What's meant to be yours will be yours, and what's not, you can't force, right?" I waited with my phone in hand for another half hour. Peter didn't reply again. In a blink of an eye, it was time to do our duty again. Peter had been leaving early and coming home late all week, looking exhausted. I bought a special piece of lingerie for the occasion. It was incredibly sexy. I spent ages looking at myself in the mirror when I got home. Taking it off, putting it back on, over and over. Though I was embarrassed, I was determined to wear it for Peter tonight. When the clock hit 6, Peter came home right on time. I went to greet him. "You're home." A flash of desire crossed his eyes before he calmly looked away and gave a faint Then, he walked straight into his study. The door closed, leaving me outside. I froze. I tugged at my outfit, feeling a wave of shame. What was wrong with him? Was he still upset? I gathered my courage and knocked on the door. "Peter, don't just bottle it up. If you're really in a bad mood, we could talk." Before I could finish my sentence, Peter opened the door. He looked down at me. "Talk about what?" I bit my lip, gathering my thoughts. "Well, sometimes it's okay if things don't work out. It doesn't mean you're any less capable than anyone else. You should learn to accept it." The composure on his face, which usually wouldn't crack even if a mountain crumbled before him, was slowly disintegrating. His brow furrowed. "Accept it?" I nodded. His hand, hanging by his side, clenched into a fist. He took a deep breath. "Mandy, don't push your luck." With that, he shut the door again. What does that have to do with me? What is with this guy? I felt a little hurt. I called Mia and we went to a quiet bar to talk. Mia listened to my story. She had an "I knew it" look on her face as she said, "Peter is just too cold. It's not just with you. He's not even warm to his own parents. Hardly anyone in our circle deals with him. That man has no sense of loyalty. He walks around all day with a long face like someone owes him $8 million. He's nothing like his brother." Peter's brother was named Sean. I'd heard of him. A genius taken too soon, he died in a car crash at 26. He was gentle, refined, and tactful. He'd been raised as the heir and excelled at almost everything. Even now, Peter's parents were always comparing him to Sean. They were never satisfied. It seemed no matter how hard Peter worked, in their eyes, he could never measure up to Sean. Sometimes I felt like Peter wasn't their son. He was just a substitute, a tool for continuing the family line. In that way, he was a lot like me. I couldn't help but defend him. He's actually a very good person. He might be a little cold and quiet, but he can be really gentle sometimes. And he has a great memory. He always remembered things I told him, just once. Like how I love beef noodle soup. Or how I have a sensitive stomach, so the house is always stocked with stomach medicine, various supplements, and medicinal meals. He remembered I don't like to go shopping. So every season, he has the latest jewelry and accessories sent directly to me. My closets are full of clothes and shoes, replaced season after season. I can't possibly wear them all. I told him not to be so wasteful. But he said, you can choose not to wear them, but you can't not have them. He said something similar before our wedding. It was Valentine's Day. We were having dinner together, and he produced a small, exquisite box and handed it to me. I opened it to find a diamond ring. It looked very expensive. I wanted to refuse. I told him I wasn't used to wearing things like that. He didn't look at me, just said coolly, you don't have to wear it, but I have to buy it. After that, I didn't say anything more. I just marveled at how well-mannered he was. To be manipulated into a marriage like this and still be willing to maintain a basic level of decency. Mia gave me a helpless look. He treats you like that, and you're still defending him. But I'm just telling the truth. It's like when other people say things about me, and you defend me. Because you can see the good in me. And I can see the good in Peter. Later that evening, Mia's boyfriend came to pick her up. They were so affectionate with each other, it made me envious. On the way home, I stared out the window, lost in thought. Teenagers in school uniforms laughed and chased each other down the street. A young couple pushed a stroller while walking their dog. An elderly couple walked hand in hand under the streetlights. Suddenly, I wanted to end this marriage. I may have a lot of flaws, but there's one thing I'm good at, being decisive. When I handed the divorce papers to Peter, he froze. His breathing quickened. A crack finally appeared on his usually unfazed expression. He tugged at his tie in frustration. Then he asked, why? I don't care. I assumed he meant he didn't care about our sham of a marriage. Didn't care about our relationship that seemed so close yet was miles apart. I said, but I do. Before, I had no expectations for marriage. Since I couldn't choose for myself, I felt that it didn't matter who I ended up with. Later, I started to want to build a real life with Peter. Once I had that thought, I started to become very strange. I began to fantasize about what a normal couple was like. What a normal husband and wife were like. I started to hope for love in my marriage. I hoped Peter would pay more attention to me. I hoped we wouldn't be such strangers to each other. But I don't have a very likable personality. I can't say sweet things. I'm dull and slow to warm up. I want to get closer, but I don't dare. Because I know my courage is so fragile that if he rejects me just once, I'll never have the nerve to try again. And so, I became anxious, constantly worrying about losing something I never really had. I hate feeling this way. After a long silence, Peter picked up the divorce papers from the table and looked at them for a few seconds. He said, we'll split the assets 50-50. I'll have a new agreement drawn up for you. I instinctively refused. You don't have to. I don't have anything valuable to my name. Everything of Peter's has nothing to do with me. Why should I take half of his assets? Peter stood up. We were husband and wife, after all. Peter invited both sets of parents to dinner, intending to break the news to them ahead of time to avoid trouble later. Before we got out of the car, he instructed me, don't say anything in there. I'll handle it. I nodded slightly. In the private dining room, our parents were enjoying their meal. Peter spoke up out of the blue, I'm planning to get a divorce. The table fell silent. Peter's mother was the first to speak. Are you insane? You want a divorce after only 6 months? Do you think marriage is a joke? Peter's father's face was grim. My mom tried to smooth things over. Did Mandy do something wrong? Husbands and wives have to be patient with each other. You know, Mandy was adopted by those kinds of people. so her character is naturally. Peter frowned, cutting her off. This has nothing to do with her. It's me. I want the divorce. You all think you're so superior. Don't tell me you can't understand plain English. My parents' faces changed instantly. But out of a sense of decorum, they held their tongues. Peter's father grabbed a ceramic chopstick rest from the table and threw it at Peter. You worthless son. Why couldn't it have been you who died instead? The porcelain object grazed Peter's forehead. Bright red blood began to trickle down. I never thought Peter's father would say something like that, let alone get violent. I was startled and jumped up, my heart aching as I went to check Peter's wound. He pressed my hand down, murmuring, "I'm fine." He was lying. He was clearly in pain, and his eyes were red. I stepped in front of him and said angrily, "Why would you say something like that? Isn't Peter your son? Does it make you happy to see him suffer?" My mom frowned and snapped, "Shut up." The dinner ended on a sour note. I went home with my parents. The moment we walked in the door, my mom, still fuming, turned and started yelling at me. "How many times did I tell you? This marriage is important. It affects both of our company's futures. You can't learn anything right. It's one thing to be slow, but how can you not even handle being a wife? You've disappointed me so much." I stood in the doorway, looking at my furious mother. I asked softly, "Mom, have I disappointed you again?" But no one ever taught me how to be a proper daughter. She was speechless. I got lost when I was 6 and was taken by human traffickers. My early childhood is a blur. I only remember being passed between several families. I ran away when I was 12 and met my adoptive parents. They were very old. And very poor. They were always hunched over, pushing a tricycle cart selling wonton soup. One bowl cost less than $1. They had to be out on the street by 4 in the morning. They worked tirelessly to send me to school and teach me right from wrong. My adoptive father's health was poor, and he passed away when I was 15. My adoptive mother was diagnosed with a terminal illness when I was 19. That was the year my biological parents found me. They gave me money to help pay for my adoptive mother's treatment. But she was too sick. No amount of medicine could save her. Before she died, my adoptive mother said that seeing me settled gave her peace. As she closed her eyes, she patted my hand and told me to live a good life. After returning to the Wilson family, I really struggled to fit in. Everything around me felt alien. I had never seen such a huge chandelier. I had never seen a walk-in closet bigger than my high school classroom. And I had never slept on such a soft bed. My parents did take care of me. But they weren't close. I could understand. We hadn't seen each other in over a decade, of course we'd be strangers. I could also understand that I wasn't like my sister, smart, lively, beautiful, and loved by everyone. I tried hard, but my mother's eyes always held a look of disappointment. I thought she was just disappointed that I was a slow learner. So I worked desperately hard, trying to win her approval. It's only now that I understand. The real source of her disappointment was me, as a person. I could never become the daughter she wanted. My past was a stain in her eyes. My adoptive parents, to her, were people who were beneath her. My thoughts returned to the present. My dad cleared his throat. "All right, let's not talk about disappointment in a family. Mandy, you didn't get to eat much just now, did you? I'll have the housekeeper make you some pasta." I don't eat pasta. I hate the taste. My dad was taken aback. "Then how about some milk to tide you over?" I'm allergic to milk. Every time I drink it, I start to itch. My mom frowned. "Allergic? How come you've never mentioned that?" I smiled faintly. "See? You're not a very good mother either. Compared to my old mom, you don't even come close. So I'm disappointed in you, too." Then, I turned to my dad. "And you?" Before they could react, I turned and walked out of the Wilson house. I tried calling Peter, but he didn't pick up. I went home to look for him, but he wasn't there. I sent him a text. "Are you okay?" He didn't reply. A few minutes later, I sent another one. "Make sure you clean that cut." He didn't reply to that either. That afternoon, Mia called me. She said Leo was leaving the country and asked if I wanted to go see him off. "So soon? Isn't he going to stay for the holidays?" Mia said, "My brother's swamped with work over there. You know how it is, can't keep a grown man home." I smiled and asked for the address. The three of us had a meal together. During the meal, the smell of the beef broth made me feel incredibly nauseous. Mia was surprised. "You're not pregnant, are you?" Leo, who was about to serve me some soup, paused and looked up at me. I wasn't sure. "I don't think so." We saw Leo off at the departure gate. He glanced at my stomach, then leaned down and gave me a light hug. "Be happy." I smiled. "You too." Afterward, Mia went with me to the hospital. The test results came back, and I was indeed pregnant. Not even 2 months along. I was stunned. Just as we were about to get a divorce, I get pregnant. Seeing my worried expression, Mia waved a hand in front of my face. "Didn't you want a baby? Why don't you look happy?" I didn't tell her the truth. I just said I found it a little hard to believe. Mia nodded in agreement. "It is pretty unbelievable." She took my hand. "Let's make a deal. When your baby is born, I get to be the godmother." She started planning to herself. "What should I get the baby?" "Gold is too tacky." "How about a car?" No, they can't drive it, and it'll just sit there uselessly." Her muttering surrounded me like a gentle hum. I slowly placed a hand on my belly, feeling the tiny life I couldn't yet feel. I was conflicted. I was happy, but at the same time, I felt completely lost. After thinking it over and over, I decided that Peter had a right to know. I had to discuss this with him. 2 more days passed, and Peter was still nowhere to be found. He wasn't even going to the office. His secretary said, "Mr. Chi has been working remotely lately. I don't know where he is either." I got the contact info for one of Peter's close friends from the secretary. I called the number. After a few rings, a voice answered, "Hello, who's this?" I introduced myself. "Hi, this is Mandy. I was wondering if you've seen Peter these past few days? If you see him, could you please ask him to contact me? I have something very important to tell him." The person on the other end paused for a few seconds. "Oh, hey, it's you." "Yeah, Peter was with me the day before yesterday, but I haven't seen him today." I felt a pang of disappointment. "Oh, okay. Thanks for your trouble." "No problem. Don't worry, if I see him, I'll definitely tell him to get back to you." Mrs. Chen's son was getting married today, so she had taken the day off. I ate dinner out by myself. When I got home, a single warm lamp was lit. My little dog, Roundy, circled my feet, his tail wagging excitedly. He barked in one direction. I followed his gaze. There was Peter, head down, crouching in front of his pet communication buttons. I walked over. "Peter?" The smell of alcohol was strong. I knelt down. "How did you get so drunk?" He looked up. His eyes were red, as if he'd been crying. His bangs were messy on his forehead, a far cry from his usual cool and collected self. The cut on his forehead had scabbed over but was still noticeable. My voice softened without me realizing it. "What's wrong?" He didn't speak. He just reached out and pressed the buttons. "Sad. Sad." I froze. He pressed again. Don't want. I didn't understand. I tilted my head curiously. "Don't want what?" Just then, I noticed a piece of paper next to him. I picked it up. It was the new divorce agreement he had drawn up. My heart filled with a mix of emotions. At that moment, a phone rang. It was Peter's. The caller ID said Sam, his best friend. I answered it. I was about to tell him that Peter was home. But before I could speak, I was hit with a barrage of words. Dude, you finally answered your phone. Where the hell did you go? Mandy's been looking for you. I told you, if you don't want to get a divorce, just tell her. Why do you have to be so dramatic about it? Are the 3 words, I love you, that hard to say? I really don't get you. Just then, the sound of the pet communicator came again. Love you. Love you. Sam was stunned. What was that? I snapped back to my senses and quickly explained, oh, sorry. Peter's drunk. The other end went completely silent. I ended the call and met Peter's gaze. Roundy came over to join the fun. Daddy. Mommy. Eat. Eat. The first ray of morning sun streamed into the bedroom. The hand resting on my waist stirred. After 3 seconds of silence, Peter shot up. I opened my eyes. Morning. His memory was hazy, his face grave. Last night. After an internal struggle, he chose to apologize. Sorry, I was drunk. I was confused. It took me a few seconds to understand what he meant. He probably thought something had happened between us last night. Getting back into bed together while in the middle of a divorce. It did sound pretty bizarre. I sat up, carefully smoothing my hair to maintain some dignity, and changed the subject. Are you hungry? Mrs. Chen was off yesterday. She won't be back until this afternoon. He was surprised by my reaction but quickly accepted it. He nodded. Oh, okay. I'll go make breakfast. With that, he slipped on his slippers and walked out of the bedroom like a puppet. 20 minutes later, he knocked on the door. It's ready. It was beef noodle soup, my favorite. A glass of warm water was next to it. I had casually placed the divorce papers in the most conspicuous spot last night. Throughout breakfast, Peter's brow remained furrowed. I picked up the papers. About this. He cut me off. Take a look. If you don't have any objections, just sign it. He managed to say it calmly, but he couldn't meet my eyes. I took a sip of water and said softly, Peter, I've changed my mind. I don't want to get a divorce anymore. He froze. Thinking he had misheard, he looked up. What? I repeated, I said, can we not get a divorce? I placed a hand on my stomach. I'm pregnant. Just over 7 weeks. His eyelashes trembled. A flash of joy crossed his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a much more complex emotion. A moment later, he let out a self-deprecating laugh and said quietly, okay. I breathed a sigh of relief. Remembering what Sam had said on the phone, I grew bolder. I made a request. Can you come home from work earlier to be with me from now on? Yes. I want to go to the movies today. Okay. I also want to go to an amusement park. He took out his phone. I'll book the tickets. Can I order a boba tea? He stopped scrolling on his phone. Sorry, you can't have that. The doctor said you can't have any dairy products. I smiled. Actually, a lot of boba teas don't have milk in them. I can drink those. He frowned. I'll ask the doctor. He got up to make the call. Dr. Evans. I rested my chin on my hand, watching his back, lost in thought. It was just a cup of boba tea. I could have ordered it myself. But I liked being looked after, being cared for. Being held in someone's heart. When I was about 5 months pregnant, my sister, Renee, came back from abroad. She stared at my belly, her mouth agape. You're pregnant? I didn't understand why her reaction was so extreme. I just nodded instinctively. She put a hand to her forehead. They forced you to get married, and now they've forced you to get pregnant. Mandy, are you a doormat? Do you have no backbone at all? She paced around anxiously. When our parents tried to force her into the arranged marriage, she refused. So they locked her in her room, claiming they needed to break her spirit. My sister and I had always been close. So when I saw her red, swollen eyes, I didn't think about anything except her happiness. I took her hand and said seriously, Mom and Dad aren't home today. Why don't you run for it? We were on the same page instantly. She packed her bags and left that night. When my parents asked, I was half asleep and played dumb. The reason my sister suddenly returned was that she had heard the news of me marrying Peter. Snapping back to the present, she had stopped pacing. She looked at me with determination. It's okay, it's okay. I bought a house abroad and have a stable job. I can support you and the baby, no problem. She started calculating. You're only 5 months along, you can still fly. She frantically took out her phone. Right, I'll book the tickets now. We'll leave immediately. I pressed her hand down. I'm not leaving. She seemed to calm down a bit, murmuring, Right, we can't leave now. You have to get divorced first. I was trying to figure out how to explain things to her when Mrs. Chen's voice came from the entryway. Sir, you're home. Why don't you go in? My sister instantly fell silent. We both looked toward the corner. Peter walked over calmly, gave my sister a slight nod as a greeting, and then silently turned and went into the study. My sister bit her lip and pointed in the direction Peter had just gone. Did he just hear what we were saying? Probably, he did. I made a cup of coffee and brought it into the study. Peter was focused on his work, not even glancing up. I felt a little awkward. I wanted to stay but had no excuse. I wanted to leave but felt uneasy. I gritted my teeth and went for the direct approach. Did you just hear what my sister said? His hand, which was flipping through a file, paused slightly. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. I'm not trying to blame you. I just wanted to tell you that I'm not going to get a divorce, and I'm not leaving. Please, don't take what my sister said to heart, okay? I watched him cautiously. Only when he nodded and said, okay, did I finally relax. I moved closer to him, a smile on my face. Guess what? I think the baby moved today. He looked up, a glimmer of joy in his eyes. I pushed my belly toward him and asked, do you want to feel? He slowly and carefully placed his palm on my stomach. The next second, he froze. A smile spread across his face, lighting up his eyes. It really moved. The baby seemed to recognize him, kicking back as if to interact. I was overcome with an indescribable feeling. Like something had filled a void in my heart completely. People say that when you love someone, it's obvious. Even if you don't say it, the love just shines out of your eyes. I guess that's what I'm like. Tonight, my sister was lying in bed next to me. She propped her chin on her hand and stared at me for a long time before suddenly asking, Are you in love with Peter? Was it that obvious? Before I could answer, she asked again, What about Leo, then? Didn't you like Leo? I frowned. Leo and I are just friends. When did I ever say I liked Leo? She looked at me in disbelief. He was the only male friend you ever had around. I just assumed you two were. I shook my head, quickly explaining, no. Absolutely not. What about Peter, then? She asked. I smiled. I love him. I love him a lot. As I said it, I saw a shadow at the door quietly slip away. My sister hesitated. But Peter, he's known for being cold and heartless. With your personality, I'm afraid. I cut her off. That's just the surface. Actually, he's sensitive and gentle. Thinking about how he had taken care of my every need these past few days, a smile unconsciously spread across my face. He's a very good husband. And he'll be a very good father. My sister still didn't quite believe me. I pulled up the security footage from the night Peter got drunk and showed it to her. She was so shocked she could barely sleep all night. She kept muttering, "I can't believe Peter is actually like that." I, on the other hand, hid under the covers and texted Peter. "I saw you eavesdropping. That was on purpose this time, wasn't it?" The typing indicator appeared on his end. A minute later, he simply replied, "Go to sleep." My sister left again. She managed to leave without my parents ever knowing. Peter came with me to see her off at the airport. On the way home, I felt sleepy and dozed off. Peter didn't wake me when we got home. He just reclined my seat, and I slept in the car for over 2 hours. He stayed by my side the whole time. I asked him, "Why didn't you wake me up?" He answered with a different question, "Mandy, do you want to have a wedding? After the baby is born, we can have a ceremony just for the two of us." Our first wedding was rushed. Our parents only cared about the marriage certificate, so they skipped as many of the complicated parts as possible. The venue and decorations were all leftovers from what they had prepared for my sister and Sean. At the time, I didn't care. But it's different now. After all, who wouldn't want to have a romantic wedding with the person they love, one that belongs only to them? I nodded, stunned. "I do." He smiled and took my hand, our wedding rings overlapping. He whispered, "Okay." A year later, we held a second wedding ceremony in a church abroad. Peter planned the entire thing himself. Even the wedding dress I wore was from a design he sketched and had custom made. The officiant stood between us, his expression solemn and sacred. His voice echoed through the church. "Mr. Peter Chi, from this day forward, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, in youth and in old age, will you be faithful to your bride and walk with her hand in hand through life?" Peter looked at me and said earnestly, "I am willing to spend the rest of my life with you. I promise to give you all my loyalty, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, in youth or in old age, I will never change." "And you? Are you willing?" My eyes grew warm. A tear slid down my cheek. I stood on my tiptoes and kissed his lips. "I am." Epilogue. Peter had never thought about getting married, let alone marrying his brother's fiancée. He refused without hesitation, losing his temper with his parents for the first time. He cut off contact for a month. It wasn't until the Wilson family was hosting a party to formally introduce their younger daughter that he was forced to reconnect. He was invited. He didn't want to go, but his mother called him, her tone uncharacteristically soft. The two families were old friends and had numerous business dealings. Fine. He would go. He just didn't expect that this one compromise would lead to such an accident. He and Mandy woke up in the same bed and were photographed leaving. He knew it was his parents' scheme. Another argument erupted. But after the argument, he had to consider the girl's situation. He knew Mandy. They had been at the same university, in different years. He had only seen her a few times from a distance. He'd heard from Sam that she had a tough lot, that even after returning home, she wasn't particularly cherished. Peter thought, if something like this happened and he refused to marry her, what would happen to Mandy? So, he gave in. Forced by their parents, they spent half a month together. He started to develop feelings for her. He even started to feel a glimmer of hope for marriage. At the wedding, nothing belonged to him. Except for the girl in front of him. She was completely his. After the wedding, Mandy got a puppy. She often talked to the puppy. She placed a lot of buttons around the house, explaining to Peter that they were pet communication devices. She tilted her head up, asking cautiously, "Will having these here bother you?" "No." "Oh, good." The once cold and empty house finally had some life in it. She seemed to love the puppy more than anyone. Peter moved his workspace from the study to the living room, his gaze constantly drawn to the pair, one big and one small. Mandy noticed and looked at him, flustered. "Am I bothering you?" Peter snapped back to reality, the tips of his ears burning. He cleared his throat. No. Mandy smiled, revealing a pair of small dimples. He looked down, not daring to look at her anymore. In the second month of their marriage, their relationship had softened considerably. Mandy was no longer overly polite. Being together was no longer as awkward as before. She even taught the puppy to call her mommy and him daddy. Daddy. It was his first time being a father. The puppy would bark at her, its tail wagging like a propeller. She would smile, her eyes crinkling, and give the puppy a treat. He thought it was a bit childish, but very cute. She was cute. The puppy was cute too. Peter started to unconsciously imitate her. When she wasn't around, he would also try talking to the puppy. He even started calling himself daddy in front of the dog. One afternoon, Mandy fell asleep on the sofa. Sunlight streamed in through the window, blanketing her in warmth. And there he was, crouching on the floor with a piece of duck jerky. The puppy pressed a button. Daddy. Daddy. Love you. Love you. Peter couldn't quite describe the feeling. But he knew he wanted to live out his life, happily, with Mandy. But it seemed her heart belonged to someone else. While out with Sam, he overheard news about Leo. Sam suddenly remembered something and clapped him on the shoulder. You know they used to be a couple, right? Peter was silent. A moment later, he stood up. What happened in the past has nothing to do with now. Though that's what he told himself, his mind was a mess. His heart ached with an unfamiliar sourness. He, who never smoked, lit up a cigarette for the first time. Leo, the son of the Liu family. Gentle, considerate, a good man, indeed. It was just a shame that because of what happened, she was forced to be tied to him instead. To avoid annoying Mandy, Peter tried his best to keep his distance. They returned to being parallel lines that never intersected. Until one day. It was an ordinary afternoon. He had just finished a meeting and was reviewing a contract. Mandy, out of the blue, came to his office. She dropped a bombshell. Can we have a baby? Peter thought he was going crazy from overwork. It took him a long time to process it. Looking into Mandy's expectant and timid eyes, he nodded, trying to sound composed. I suppose so. The days passed one by one. It seemed things were improving again. Peter grew more and more accustomed to Mandy's presence. Everything in the house carried her scent. He loved coming home from work every day and seeing her lounging on the sofa. A workaholic had started to punch out on time every day. 9 o'clock. Peter saw Mandy get into Leo's car. And then, she didn't come home all night. He couldn't sleep. He sat in the living room all night. He felt like Mandy was provoking him. Mandy had said, "Don't worry, setbacks are normal. You have to allow for unexpected things to happen. Sometimes it's okay if things don't work out. It doesn't mean you're any less capable than anyone else. You should learn to accept it." Failure? Who had he lost to? Leo? It really seemed that way. Forget it. Her life wasn't easy either. But then she wanted to divorce him. Peter wanted to save their marriage, but he didn't know where to start. After much deliberation, all he could manage was, "We'll split the assets 50-50. Forget it. If she wanted a divorce, he should respect her wishes. Later, many years after, they talked about the misunderstanding. Mandy was furious. How could you also think I liked Leo? We were married. Shouldn't you have asked me? You had the right to confront me. She was right. But back then, Peter didn't dare. It was all a scheme from the start. He thought it was all about benefits, with no real feelings involved. Who knew that later? Mandy stood with her hands on her hips. If I hadn't found out I was pregnant, we definitely would have gotten divorced. That was way too close. Peter smiled and pinched her cheek. Our daughter is our hero. When she gets home from school, I'll treat her to something special. She pouted playfully. What about me? No treat for me? What do you want? I want boba tea. No, it's not good for you. Just this once. Fine. A hot one. She planted a quick kiss on his cheek. Deal. And for all the years that followed, they lived happily ever after.